Um, oh, hey. Well, actually, you know what? I'm actually recording. Should I not record yet?
No. No, you're not. We are Locked On Houston Astros, and we hope that you join us for a daily Locked On Astros podcast. My name is Eric Heisman. You can find me on Twitter at Eric Talks Stros. You can find the show at Locked On Astros. Your team every day. Brett, where can they find you at?
They can find me at H-Town Wheelhouse on Twitter and at Stros411 at Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Always positive, always Stros.
All right, for a second day in a row, we have the great, the one and only pitching ninja, Rob. How are you doing, Rob? I mean, this is 2 days in a row that you've joined this podcast. And I know yesterday we talked a little bit about you, but we're going to talk a little bit about the Astros today. So where can they find you on Twitter?
I am at Pitching Ninja on Twitter, and I'm a Pitching Ninja on Instagram and Pitching Ninja videos on YouTube. And I am definitely the one and only. I'm not sure about the great part, but we'll take
I'm not really sure. Where can we find you again on Twitter? I mean,
that'd be Pitching Ninja.
Okay, sorry. Alrighty, so I know, guys, that y'all have been listening to this, but you can get Locked On Astros on podcast and app Emily, as well as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. When you get in car, tell your smart device played podcast, Locked On Astros. So the big question I had for you, Rob, is Framber Valdez. I know you brought him up yesterday, but a lot of us had our doubts. A lot of us thought, well, he hasn't done anything, so he's going to suck, and he's going to always suck. But we have Mike Trout out there saying, no, this guy's got some best stuff on the Astro staff, and that includes at the time Garrett Cole and Justin Verlander. So what do you think about Framber Valdez before this year, and what do you think has changed this year?
You know what? Before this year, I did like his stuff. I didn't know. I probably had my own doubts. I do remember that Trout quote was like he said he had one of the best stuff in the entire major leagues. So when Mike Trout says something, you pay attention, and I absolutely was paying attention to him. But during the season, without a doubt, he was one of those guys that I had to watch every time out. Fantastic stuff. I love his makeup. That curveball is just filthy, and he plays off it really well. So I think he's the real deal. He kind of proved it. He stepped up when they needed him, and definitely a big Framber fan. I mean, he was a must see on the ninja list.
So when it comes to guys like that, these young guys, the Astros had to field 9 minor league pitchers in the wake of Justin Verlander being, shelved for next year, possibly not coming back to the Astros. We don't know. But before that, what did you see out of Justin Verlander that you don't see out of a lot of pitchers? Because he reminds me of the old, what I call big body pitchers, the Nolan Ryans, the Steve Carltons, the Randy Johnsons. What were you seeing out of him that you really liked when he won that Cy Young for the Astros?
Oh, I mean, he's just a Hall of Famer in everything he does. Like, he carries himself on and off the field as a Hall of Famer. You watch him, he respects the game. He knows the history of the game. He is exactly in the mold of a Nolan Ryan, will come right at you. His curveball is filthy, fastball, just pure heat. But he's also one of those guys that gets by because he knows himself. Like, he doesn't try to do too much. One of the things, objectively, when I was watching them last year, and over a few years, I saw Garrett Cole stuff. Garrett Cole stuff, lit up my eyes. I'm like, that dude is just absolutely off the charts filthy. Verlander it's a combination of him knowing himself, knowing what he can do, and then commanding it. It wasn't necessarily that his stuff was amazing. Like, his slider, I wasn't saying that is the nastiest slider I've ever seen, but the way he is able to have his pitches work off each other and know hitters' weaknesses and pitch to it, and the confidence he pitches with, and never trying to do too much. And that is through just learning over the years about what works and what doesn't work. That is what a Hall of Famer is made out of. And that dude is absolutely one of the great pitchers of the modern era. Like, you have to rank him as one of the, I mean, he's just awesome. Like, I tip my cap to him. He is just a monster on the mound. So what I saw was a guy who knows himself. And that is, again, something that you can't measure. Like, that's one of those things that all the stat guys will sit there and go, why is he great? Why? Like, yeah, he's got it, spin rate, blah, blah, blah. He knows himself. He knows what to do with his pitches and knows how they work off each other and is able to optimize it while also having a fantastic, like, literally top tier historical pitching coach in Brent Strom coaching him, who just will helps you take it to the next level because he knows people. I know Brent, and that dude is I mean, he was talking about Nolan Ryan. He played with Nolan Ryan. So he goes way back. He knows all these guys. He is knows everything about the game. And to unlock that, pass it forward to a new generation with Verlander, and now passing it to the next generation is just fantastic.
Speaking of next generation, I know I've been made fun of by Mr. Homer over there and Brett Chansey, and I said that Christian Javier will have more wins next year than Framber Valdez. I know that Christian Javier was finished third place in the Rookie of the Year voting. I think he got one actual third place vote, if I remember correctly. But this guy has got great stuff. This is something that Jeff Luhnow kind of saw as he was rising. And this is a guy who had the invisible, and he's got this different style. What have you seen about Christian Javier?
I agree. So that's one of those things that, we measure a lot of stuff. There are things we can measure. We can measure spin rate. We can measure, break on pitches. We can the combination of arm slot and spin rate and deception. So I've been talking to a few stat guys about trying to measure deception. And it's something you can't measure today. Like, hitters know it. They say that ball just jumped on me, more than just a spin rate. Like, I couldn't see it out of the pitcher's hand. And that is a deception quotient that I don't think nobody can figure it out. I've asked people. And that kind of the next frontier. And I think Javier is one of the guys that has it. So who will be better? That's a tough one, though, because I love Framber.
I didn't say better. I said more wins.
Yeah, but you can't judge people on wins. Come on, man.
I know.
Like, that just depends. But I don't, like, both of those guys are really good. So I love the pitching staff. Like, at least the starters, you had those two. You had McCullers, and then my man Greinke, who would be like an all-time great person to meet and talk with, but he wouldn't want to talk with me if I was trying to talk with him, because that's just
yeah, he'd be like, what?
Yeah. I have a feeling it would either be a really good conversation or a really crappy conversation, and I'm probably leaning towards the crappy stuff because he'd look at me like I was strange.
Who are you?
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, I know you.
And he'd give me one of these things, and yeah.
It's just like when he goes out in the little pressers and says, I want to go out and I want to go for like 150 innings, or I want to get, like he did his mind. I mean, that guy he's one of those guys that's very, very hard to read. We have a guy in our school who teaches math, and everybody thinks all the kids think he's like a vampire, because he's just like, he's got this stoicism about him, and he's got a great sense of humor. And it's like Greinke, like every once in a while Greinke will just say something, and it's not like he doesn't set up a joke. He just has a real deadpan, dry sense of humor. It's been fun seeing his personality play out, and I think the team's kind of needed that.
So that is a combination of number one, he's always like that. Like Zach Greinke is just he is what I love about baseball, the individual personalities. I think, he is so much fun. If you follow me, you know that I love Zach Greinke. Like, he's one of my favorite. Like, I can't miss a pitch that dude throws. But he's unique. And then you have a guy like Strom who understands that. Like, Brent Strom knows what buttons to push. And with Greinke, he lets him be. Like, he'll help develop say, hey, you be yourself. And Greinke was more of himself this year than ever. And it was so much like, I don't care. Like it's a 60-game season. He didn't blow people away. It wasn't his best season, but it was the most fun season to watch him pitch. Like that was, if I'm paying money, I'm watching Zach Greinke pitch. That's just what I'm doing.
Yeah, with him throwing the 56-mile-per-hour fastballs or curveballs or whatever that was, it was just like, yeah, you never knew, and he just had fun with it. And so, with that being said, I know you followed him. Have you seen a very big progression since his time with the Diamondbacks, with the Astros?
So I've seen more confidence in him. Like he's one of those dudes that has always had that confidence in himself, but teams would squash it a little bit. Like nobody likes that guy who's an outlier. I mentioned there are team guys. He's a harder guy to figure out. I think once you do figure it out, it's worth it. And there are players that do figure. I noticed McCullers sitting next to him in some games and trying to pick his brain on stuff. And I actually haven't asked Lance what they were talking about. I will now that I remembered that. But the ability to learn from that guy is fantastic for all the younger Astros pitchers, but also the Astros letting people be themselves. He has a weird cockiness. Like you have the Bregman cockiness, but you have the Greinke quiet confidence. Like before Game 7, when they asked him, like, so what do you think? You're going Game 7, and he's like, it's going to be a big game. I mean, that's literally all he said, and that was such a great answer. We have Scherzer, who is, just looking like he's going to rip someone's face off, and Greinke's like, yeah, whatever. It's a big game. So I love that dude.
Yeah, I think for me, watching him on the mound, and then when he came out and said that for the first time since he's been with the Astros, he felt like they had confidence in him. And I thought that was a huge statement because, AJ Hinch is now with the Tigers. But I mean, anyone you talk to in Houston,
it wasn't just with the Astros. It was period. He said first time.
Right. But I think, to me, I thought AJ Hinch was always that guy. He was that player's coach. And for me to hear that from Greinke say, and then I was like, you know what? Dusty Baker was the right person for this job. I know there's some moves that we still go, oh, why did you do that?
There's always going to be that with him, yeah.
But, at the end of the day, I thought that was great. Now, I want to ask you about Enoli Paredes. This kid, I basically describe him as having a live arm. I mean, he is unreal. His speed to the plate, his delivery, the way his arm whips. I mean, I would love to watch his pitching motion in slow motion. The way he
reminds me of Dotel, sort of.
Yeah, kind of.
I can see that.
I mean, what have you seen out of him that you really like that he brings to the game?
He's electric. I mean, dude plays with a huge personality. He plays like he pitches. I mean, the whole Enoli's cannolis thing was fantastic. Like he's got this whole persona about him. And to me, a large part of the game, what you were just mentioning about Greinke is a large part of baseball. Baseball is a confident sport. You have to develop your own playing personality. He's got one. Paredes has a playing personality. Framber has a playing personality. The Astros, Baker does a great job of he's an old school guy, but he understands players. Like he's a player manager who gets that players have to be themselves. And it doesn't surprise me that Greinke said that, because that's what you can see when you're watching the Astros. You have Correa, you have Bregman, you have a bunch of individual personalities, but you let them all be themselves, and that brings the best out of somebody. You've all been managed by somebody who was just a jerk and wanted it done their way, and then you've managed somebody who let you be you. And it's the same thing in business, it's the same thing in sports, whatever it is. There are people that play the game, there are people that work, and it's not all numbers. And these guys that's why they were able to rise to the occasion in the playoffs. I mean, it was fun to watch, chip on your shoulder, let them be them. And I love it. And I think he's one of those guys. I mean, that's another big piece to the puzzle on the pitching staff.
All right. So speaking of letting players be their own person, Forrest Whitley is somebody that comes to mind, somebody who's been the top prospect out there and who's kind of fallen short, whether it be the drugs or whatever happened. Have you ever actually looked at how he pitched and maybe done a pitch overlay with him, or just what do you think Astros fans should expect?
So one of the things that fans have to get used to is having patience. Pitchers develop at different speeds. We were talking about Nolan Ryan before we were on the air, and Ryan, look at his early years. They gave up on him. The Mets gave up on him. The Mets said he sucked. Like, he threw hard, but he sucked. He walked everybody. People develop over time. You've got to give them you got to be patient, help them along, but be understanding. And fans are terrible about that. What fans do typically, I noticed that with Strasburg back in the day for the Nats. People didn't understand the guy needed to develop. So they're like, oh, he sucks. He's never going to be one of those guys. But if you have patience in them and help and give them mentorship, and I think the Astros have that. The Astros have the ability to bring him along. That's what actually ends up getting the most out of a player. But fans don't have that patience. What happens is, so you had like Blake Trinan, a great example, with the Nats. The Nats said he sucked. He was terrible too. And they traded him. And then all of a sudden he became great. Well, things just clicked in him. He was a later developing guy. He was the same pitcher. I saw that same stuff when he was with the Nats. He was filthy. He just didn't put it together. And fans sit there and they're very critical. But you got to think sometimes, what would you do in that situation? Every time you do something, you're at work and somebody says, you suck, you screwed that up, you're terrible. Like, hey, this podcast, you should have done this, and then all of a sudden you're watching what you're doing.
Dang, you're going after us. Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
I mean, like, right?
And they're always like, Eric this and Eric, I'm joking.
Yeah, like Brad and Eric. Oh, let's start a fight.
It's like the JD Martinez. You've got to wait him out, and that's what Jeff Luhnow. That's Jeff Luhnow's biggest regret was JD Martinez came up to him and said, "Hey, I worked on something off season. I think I got it." And Jeff Luhnow was like, "Okay," and trade him. Or let it go, or whatever happened. And it's just like, you got to give these guys patience. And I said that with Kyle Tucker. I've been the biggest advocate of Kyle Tucker. I'm like, there's a reason why these guys didn't trade him. You got to give him time. And look what he did this year.
Look at McCullers in the first half of the season. You had McCullers where you're like, oh man, he had this bad outing, he did this, and then all of a sudden he puts it together and he starts striking everybody out. I mean, you've
60 games.
Yeah, right. It's 60 games. Like, it's a short sample set, but even 162, that's one season under their belt. And you've got to understand that as a fan, when you're criticizing somebody and you're saying you suck, it feels good. Like, for whatever reason, you're getting weight off your shoulders of your terrible life, but really you're crushing somebody. Like,
you're getting blocked, right? You're getting blocked.
I don't think he did anything.
I didn't do anything. I'm innocent. I'm innocent, Judge.
Honestly, I got blocked because I interviewed him when he was still in Corpus Christi, and he's like, "Yeah, Eric, I'll never forget about the little people." And I'm like, "Oh, thank you." And I mentioned one time he did a free throw contest at the Rockets game. And I'm like, "Oh, was that awesome? Did it feel cool to do that free throw and shot?" And he's like, "Block." I'm like, "Okay, never mind."
Oh, did he miss it?
I don't remember, but
okay.
So if he missed, I think I remember that free throw though. He might have missed it. So yeah, all right, I get it. Yeah, all right. No, honestly though, like, this is part of the game. Like, you got to. Fans if you're going to be part of the team and part of their success, you got to understand that some players take longer to develop. That's all I'm saying is, we have to more patience.
Right. Well, with Kyle Tucker, when he came up, the first gripe I heard about him was, he looks like he doesn't care.
He's lazy.
He's nonchalant. And I'm like, he's not George Springer.
He's too skinny.
He's not Carlos Correa. He's not Alex Bregman. Something cool, Rob. We had actually moved to Louisiana for 2 years, and those were the 2 years that Alex Bregman was at LSU. We got to see him in his freshman campaign, and we got to see him in his sophomore campaign. And I saw him play center field. I saw him play shortstop. I saw him play second base. I saw him score at home all the way from first on a double. I mean, I saw him play against Maryland, against South Carolina, against all these schools. And when we left and came back, it was like a few months from the draft. And my son and I were talking on our way back to Texas. I said, man, I really hope the Astros get Alex Bregman. Had no idea he would land here in Houston. And it's just guys like that.
Thanks, Brady Aiken.
Yeah, exactly. But, here's the thing, though. This team, to me, is all about attitude. And I really think even though 2021 will come and fans will boo and all that stuff will go on, I think getting this season of 60 games with no fans kind of gave them a little bit of a buffer. And I'm okay with that. But I want to ask you about this. I know you're the pitching ninja, but I want to ask you about Jose Altuve. When you watched him play this year, what did you see? I saw a guy that looked burdened. I saw a guy that looked overwhelmed with kind of like he didn't like how people saw him. And I think he took that onto the field.
So I think there are different players. So some players want to be liked, and he may be one of those players. Like, he's a good guy. Like, everybody knows he's a good guy. People that know him know he's a good dude. And I think being the heel doesn't fit with him. Like Trevor Bauer, Trevor Bauer can handle that. Like, he wants you to hate him, and he wants you to care about him. Jose Altuve wants to be the good guy. Bregman, I don't think minds if people don't like him. He doesn't care. He plays with a chip on his shoulder. And I wanted to, number one, while we're doing an Astros thing, Alex Bregman was one of the absolute coolest dudes. I don't know if you know, but I run Flat Ground app and Flat Ground Bats to help young kids, not only young kids, but high school players, college players, minor league players find spots. And there was this actually at the time 7-year-old kid who actually his dad is a friend of mine, but I tweeted him out on Flat Ground Bats. Great swing, like fantastic swing. And I tweeted him, and Bregman commented on him. And then Bregman invited him to spring training to hit with him. And Bregman took an hour out of his day to help this 7-year-old kid who has a really nice swing named Jack Nystrom. You can look him up on Twitter if you search for him. But he took an hour out of his day to hit with him, give him lessons and stuff. And to me, that shows character. I don't care what you do, what fans think of you. This was no cameras around other than my friend's iPhone. And we tweeted it out. It became this whole big thing. But that dude cares, and he cares to pass the game down. And that's a guy that you want to go to battle with. So kudos to Bregman. I understand what you're saying about Altuve, and I did see that. Like, I don't think, like, I think he's a good dude and didn't want to be the heel and people boo him. Like, that's not what motivates him. What motivates him is just, like, he overcame so much. Smaller player, freaking stud. And that's he is a good dude. And I think it bothered him. Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt.
I think they need to do like they did in Major League and just give him Nudie magazine and the way they had a catcher throw to second base. But that's all we got for tonight's Locked On Astros podcast. Rob, where can they find you on Twitter? And this has been a really awesome 2-day podcast. So thank you for that.
Oh, my pleasure. And I am at Pitching Ninja. It's pretty easy to remember. So just find me Instagram too and YouTube Pitching Ninja videos.
All right. Is there any Astros pitcher we haven't talked about real quick that you like to watch?
Presley, when he's on, is fun to watch. I mean, I think he's fun. And Scrub had a couple of really nasty curveballs this year. I thought that were fantastic to watch. So overall, I mean, I think it's definitely a fun team.
All right, so we hope that there are not any more scrubs on the Astros bullpen. Definitely, because he just
poor guy.
You can walk the guy and strike out the guy, but it's just like you got to have more strikeouts than walks. So it's really awesome having you on, and make sure you spread to Lance McCullers to unblock us and.
Yeah,
and just
please.
And also just thanks for coming on, and it was really good to hear not that you're like unbiased, but you're a neutral person looking at the Astros pitching staff. And do you think they need to make any big changes real quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind to see them pick up a top tier closer. Wouldn't be bad. I mean, I know they're looking at Brad Hand potentially would be a pretty good addition. I like him. But there's a lot of guys that can fit that part. So I wouldn't mind to see that. Them do.
Yeah, definitely spin rate. If Jeff Luna was any indication, they like the spin rate. So
Yep.
we'll go ahead and end it at that. And then thanks for joining. And always, you're welcome back. And we'll talk more Astros pitching and everything else, and apparently hitting as well. So
yeah, I didn't mean to go off on that whole Bregman thing, but I really do. Like, I respect the dude.
All right, guys, don't forget to go check our friend Sully out at the Locked On MLB podcast, and we'll be back tomorrow, and we'll have a very special guest tomorrow as well. Not as special as today, but there's always as special as the next day, and we're not worthy thing. All right, that's all we got.